That was a lot. That was a lot. And I have a lot of thoughts about what went down, but I'm gonna wait. And we'll talk about it during the credits, maybe. I gotta digest that. Get my thoughts in order. Maybe by the time the credits roll I will have gotten it, but... please continue, Snow White.
The day I disobeyed my mother and went outside, I came home to find her looking at me with cold, lifeless eyes. She was perfectly still, and her body was as cold as ice. Soon after that, I realized she was never going to come home again. And it's my fault. I killed my own mother. If I had listened to her, if I had stayed at home, I could have been there to save her.
Once my eyes adapted to the darkness, I was able to faintly see Snow White as well as his mother. Or, rather, the lifeless black mass beside him. By her feet, I could see a pool of bodily fluids and wriggling maggots. Still, after all this time, it seemed like it was a long time ago. I guess this is a dream world, though, so it still would show what he remembers. It was so grotesque, I felt like I was going to pass out. She was so sweet and innocent and cheerful. She never lost touch with her inner child. But now no trace of her former beauty remained. I shouldn't have thought about it too deeply. The stench hit my stomach and I vomited. I would never forget this sight for as long as I lived. Snow White had watched the most important person in his life turn into a hideous monster. How long had he endured this nightmare?
I didn't mean to make you cry. Guess I was right. I'll never be a prince after all.
Beyond my tear-blurred vision, I could see him staring down at his hands. After my choking and spitting subsided, I wiped my mouth and looked up at him. He had endured a pain far worse than mine. For years. If I wanted to understand him, then I would have to accept this. I would have to accept him exactly as he was.
My mother was once so beautiful, but with each passing day, she grows uglier and uglier. That's my punishment for not saving her.
If I wanted to heal him, then I couldn't sit around and cry.
Sometime after that, I met Huntsman.
Ryoshi Arisu, my real brother. I took a deep breath, then spoke in a calm voice. How could I have forgotten something so important? At some point, I wandered into this topsy-turvy world and forgot myself.
No surprise there. This is a dream world, after all.
Which dreamed it? But I didn't bother to ask the question. After all, I was pretty sure I knew the answer.
One can say that a dream is a reproduction or recreation of our memories. In most cases, the people and places that appear in your dreams are taken wholesale from your past. Every part of this world was created from my memories. No matter what it looks like on the outside, it's still me. The whole time, I've been looking into the mirror. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Show me what I want to see. Tell me what I want to hear. Frills, lace, and ribbons. A big castle, pretty dresses. A mother who loved me. A hunter who looked after me. And then there's me, the prince. I spent a long, long time using these reflections as my only solace. I told myself I didn't need to open my eyes. I didn't need to see the truth. So what if all of it was fake? The days I spent with my loved ones were calm and peaceful, like a still lake. No pain or misery to be found.
But no joy either. Slowly, Snow White looked up at me. Beyond his thick eyelashes, his eyes glittered in the darkness. At first, I thought people were disappearing from the town, but I was wrong. In actuality, the town barely had any people in it.
Yeah, that's right. I don't have that many memories of people in my heart.
As he spoke, he smiled faintly. His voice was level, but I could only imagine the pain he felt. His solitude was eternal and unchanging, and utterly hopeless.
It wasn't really that boring, though. I had my books, after all. And through those books, I was able to learn about the outside world from the safety of my dream. That said, I was hungry for a new story.
His gaze drifted to the table. There sat a book and an apple pie. The pie was half eaten, and the book had seen so much use it was nearly falling apart. He loved both of these things so much they practically represented him. I pressed a hand to my mouth. The time I nearly threw up after eating a bite of that moldy apple pie. Was that something he experienced in his past too?
And it was around then that I met you. Huntsman had told me all about his little sister, the princess with the peculiar eyes, and I always wanted to meet you in person. Yurika Arisu. Here in my dream, you are an anomaly. You are a mirror reflection of my heart, yet you have a will of your own. I'm not that surprised you showed up, honestly. I knew of you indirectly, so it's not unreasonable that I might dream of you. But you were slightly different from my perception of Yurika Arisu, and so I realized you were more than a mirror image. The real you only had one brother, Ryoshi Arisu. And you didn't run a cafe either. You never lived in my town at all. Even then, I could shrug it off as an alternate universe version of you. But what sealed it for me was your appearance. I had only ever seen you through Huntsman's old photos. At the time, you would have been just under 10 years old. I never saw what you looked like at 19.
I shivered. Only then did I notice how abnormally cold it was inside the cabin. Man, it's really cold in here. There was no light in the darkness, no heat source to keep us warm, because this was his world. You know, I always wondered, if this is your dream, then what does that make me? After all, I have a consciousness of my own. So what exactly am I? But now I finally understand. I am a mirror reflection of your heart, but I am also a pawn. There must be another version of me in the real world trying to talk to you. And that other me? No, both of us. We want you to wake up. That's my purpose here.
Well, I don't want to wake up. I want to stay here.
Liar.
I'm not lying. I'm perfectly happy with what I have here. My mother is here. Huntsman is here. As long as I stay here, I'm a prince. I don't have to look at anything unpleasant.
But none of it is real. Snow White. You compared this dream to a still lake, but those waters are only still because your heart has frozen over. You say there's no pain or misery here, but there's no joy either. Are you really having fun, reading the same old books? Are you having fun going back and forth between the lake and your house and nowhere else? Are you having fun talking to your reflection in the mirror?
Stop!
He clapped his hands to his ears and shook his head.
I don't want to hear it!
Snow White! You claim you killed your mother, but deep down you know no one is to blame. You know it wasn't really your fault.
No!
Next, he squeezed his eyes shut, but I knew my voice could still reach him.
I killed her! It was me! I mean, it had to be. If I hadn't disobeyed her, I could have saved her!
You've only ever blamed yourself. You could have pinned the blame on someone else, but you chose not to. Because you're a kind person. But it's time to end this. I took a step forward. Frightened, Snow White took a step back.
Ugh! No. Stay back.
Nevertheless, I walked forward and touched his mother, lying slumped over the table.
Stop!
She was so sweet and innocent and cheerful. She never lost touch with her inner child. She was the woman Snow White loved most in all the world. And then, at my touch, she disintegrated.
Mother!
Desperately, he dug for her amid the mountains of trash.
Mother! Mother!
The strength drained from his limbs and he fell to his knees. As I stood there in silence, he glared up at me.
How could you be so cruel?
Still not as cruel as your mother. She locked you up in here when you were just a child.
No! It's not her fault. She was only looking out for me.
Looking out for you? By trapping you in a tiny cabin and controlling every aspect of your life? Yeah, this is one thing that finally hit me about this background. And the giant-ass birdcage. Is, well, that and the bars on the window. This whole cabin, like, it's a metaphor for it being a prison. That's why there's this giant cage. That's why there's bars on the windows. Because you view it as a cage. Or, more importantly, Alice probably viewed it as a cage. But I'm gonna get into that later. I just wanted to, since we're talking about being trapped in a cabin, I finally figured out the symbolism of the cage. Like, it took me too long to figure it out, but here we are.
Well, it's not safe outside.
Then why did you keep going out to visit the lake? The lake reflected everything upside down like a mirror, and Snow White always gazed out at it longingly.
Well,
I'm not your mother, so I don't truly know why she did the things she did. The only way to get that answer would be to ask her directly, but that's no longer possible. You, however, you are still alive. You're just sleeping as if you were dead. I know how you feel, Snow White. After all, I'm your mirror image. I opened my eyes wide so he could see his reflection. Deep down, you've always wanted to venture out into the world. You're not crazy either. You're perfectly sane. The truth is, you wanted me to figure it out. You wanted me to save you. Because you're lonely.
Stop!
You've always wanted to wake up from this nightmare.
No. This was my punishment. For failing to be a prince. For discovering the truth. But then you showed up and changed everything. Mother, Huntsman, everyone. Everything stopped going the way I wanted. Why are you rubbing the truth in my face? Why do you keep calling me a prince?
Mirror, mirror on the wall, tell me what I want to know. Years of solitude turned your heart to ice. That ice served as a mirror, showing you only what you wanted to see, telling you only what you wanted to hear. That's interesting, because, in the prologue with the Abyss, they talk about how the mirror looks like an ice crystal. But it's not really an ice crystal because it's a mirror that reflects back. So, chew on that a bit. But once I showed up, that changed too. The magic mirror became corrupted, and I shattered it. But that wasn't the only mirror here. Be honest. You always knew, didn't you? You knew why I showed up in a form you didn't recognize.
Stay away from me! Please, stay away. I don't want you to see me like this.
Desperate to escape my gaze, he buried his face in his arms. Why not?
Because the real me isn't so pristine. I'm filthy, don't you see? I haven't taken a bath, and I haven't washed my clothes. I'm greasy, and I have dandruff. Not to mention the stench I can't get rid of. I've tried everything. But no matter how much I scrub and scrub, it won't go away.
Sure enough, he smelled like old milk. But that was hardly a surprise. After all, he'd spent years and years locked up in this rotten hole.
I always wondered why my mother never wanted me to go outside. But when I looked in the mirror, I knew. It was because I looked nothing like her. That's why she didn't want me to be seen in public. I'm not a stupid prince!
It sounded like he was arguing with the part of him that always wanted to be a prince. Well, I want you. His eyes widened slightly. I can't be your queen, but I can be your princess. Then you'll be my prince.
Why? Why do you and your brother care about me so much?
Because we love you. When you love someone, you naturally want to be around them. He shook his head.
When I love someone, I want to be apart from them. I don't want the people I love to see me like this!
I reached out to him. What I wanted more than anything was for him to forgive himself.
Don't touch me! I'm filthy. You'll be tainted.
He smacked my hand away. He was terrified. Hey, look at me. Nevertheless, I reached out to him again. Oh my goodness, girl, you so brave. I grabbed his scrawny arm and leaned in. Up close, I could see that his eyes were full of tears. He was drowning in unbearable sorrow. Look me in the eye. How do you feel about my eyes?
They're beautiful. Really beautiful.
What about the reflection of yourself you see in them?
Well...
His grimy face twisted in misery. Even so, his eyes were locked on mine. Listen, Snow White. When you told me you thought my eyes were beautiful, it really meant a lot to me. So I want you to look at what's reflected in them. Because I'm you, and I want you to love me.
You're me. So... you want me to love myself?
Yep. I nodded with a smile. Before you can love someone else, you have to love yourself. Now say the magic words. See, I'm not just a mirror. I'm a magic mirror. And I'll answer any question you ask.
Mirror, mirror, standing tall, who in this land do you love most of all?
You, my prince. You are the one I love most of all. Dang. Girl got him. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty awesome. I did love that. And with that, I kissed him. I mean, take a closer look at this. Perfect. As I slowly pulled away, he stared back at me in disbelief.
Why? Remember when I asked you if you would die for me?
Yeah?
You may be an anomaly here, but you're still part of my dream. This whole world is just an illusion. So if you wake me up, you'll disappear. Are you really okay with that?
Yep.
How?
Because I love you. I love you, and I want to heal you. To that end, I don't care if I have to sacrifice myself. I'm happy as long as my beloved is happy. You're an odd duck, eh? That line again.
You're an odd duck, you know that?
I get that a lot. Maybe your dream made me this way. I shot him a playful wink. He gazed back at me, conflicted. Besides, your mom asked me to look out for you. She wanted the two of us to be friends. So clearly she wants me to save you.
That was just the dream version of her.
Yeah, maybe. But you can trust me, can't you?
Yeah. I trust you.
He struggled to smile through the pain. The truth is, I've wanted nothing more than to see you in person.
Me too.
You felt the same way?
Of course I did.
You had feelings for me?
I don't know about that, but I always dreamed of you. You looked like a princess from a picture book.
Right. Likewise, I heard about you from my brother. He would always tell me stories of the prince who ate the poisoned apple and fell fast asleep. And I always wished I could wake you up. Just then? What am I hearing? Fire again? A bright red flame ignited at our feet and began to spread throughout the room. The fire threatened to consume everything in its path.
My world. My dream. It's falling apart.
At last, this eternal dream has reached its end. I spoke softly, reassuringly. Didn't I tell you? Even after the dream ends, I'll still love you. But this time it won't be a mirror image. It'll be the real me.
But I
pressed my index finger to his lips and slowly shook my head. I'm going to wake you up, no matter what it takes. Even if I have to disappear along with the rest of your dream. Can you hear my voice? Can you understand me?
Loud and clear. When you showed up, it triggered a domino effect that changed my whole world. Your voice is oddly powerful. Normally I couldn't hear anyone, but with you, it was different. Your voice slowly melted my frozen lake and made waves in my heart.
His beautiful eyes dyed my reflection in a brilliant shade of lilac. Drawn in like a magnet, I leaned in. Snow White closed his eyes without resistance. My prince, I've come to wake you. Then I kissed him one more time. Roll the credits. Credits? Do I smell credits? Not quite yet. Still from Snow White's perspective, eh?
There I stood, a mere child, alone at the lake at night. Why the lake, you ask? No real reason. I would have happily gone anywhere, even to the other side of the planet. I just really liked the lake, that's all. On clear nights, the surrounding mountains reflected upside down on the lake's surface. It was magical. And although our town was a tourist trap, people hardly came here at night. That night was yet another clear moonlit night.
Oh, he's so little.
I just sat there and listened to the waves. You might think a lake wouldn't have waves, but you would be mistaken. The lake tide swells and recedes just like the ocean. Supposedly, these waves are created by friction between the surface water and the wind. That said, a lake is still not the same as an ocean. A lake will not lead you to distant lands. I understood that, of course. But even if it did, I would likely never go. After all, Hey, you! Out of nowhere, someone grabbed me by the shoulder. Startled, I whirled around to find a man staring down at me, panic in his eyes. It was Ryoshi. Back then, Ryoshi was a 20-year-old college student.
Who are you?
What? His eyes widened slightly, almost like he was surprised by my question. Whatever, just come with me! Ryoshi grabbed me by the arm and, without another word, dragged me off the pier and onto the lakeshore. Good grief. Isn't it past your bedtime, kid? Don't you have a friend you can spend the night with? No, I don't have any friends. At least, I assumed so, since no one ever interacted with me. But I didn't really understand friendship anyway. What are you talking about? Of course you do. What about your family? You didn't run away from home, did you? Come on, don't ignore me, damn it. I'm not. I just don't feel like answering. I could have stayed silent, but I didn't want him to keep interrogating me, so I decided to respond. Just then, he smacked me over the head. You don't get to talk to me like that, you little brat. His husky voice got even huskier as he growled at me. If anything, he looked less like a hunter and more like a wolf. So, what are you doing out here, twerp? My name isn't Twerp. It's Snow White. Snow White? He furrowed his brow. What about you, mister? Excuse me? Mister? Are you talking to me? Do you see anyone else here? I tilted my head at him. He scowled. I braced myself, thinking he would hit me, but instead he simply clucked his tongue in annoyance. Kids these days. I may be a kid, but at least I have the common decency to introduce myself. Still waiting on you. It was a ballsy retort, but I was testing the waters. Ryoshi Arisu. He reluctantly answered the question. He must have realized that I had a valid point. That's a weird name. Gee, sorry. Oh-ho, so you admit it. Ryoshi, the Japanese form of Huntsman. Arisu, the Japanese form of Alice. Two fairy tale characters mashed together. I don't think you have any room to talk on the subject. You're not a girl, are you?
Go Snow White! Kick him in the shin!
I kicked his unguarded shin. Oh! The hell was... I am not a girl. I growled in a low voice. I didn't care if he made fun of my stupid name, but I was not okay with him treating me like a girl. Ryoshi looked at me in confusion for a moment, then let out a sigh. Fine. I apologize for saying that. He raised both hands in surrender. So, Huntsman. After all that, you're not even going to call me by my name. You really want me to call you Mr. Alice? No, not really. Well then, Huntsman works, don't you think? This seemed to piss him off even more, so I decided to consider other options.
Oh yeah, this is getting better.
Grandpa? Huntsman is fine. Apparently he didn't like Grandpa either. Very picky, this one. When I saw you zoning out over here, I thought you were gonna drown yourself or something. Drown myself? Why would I do that? How should I know? I'm just saying, it's not normal for a kid to be out here by himself this late. Then why are you out here by yourself this late? Sure, he had a scary face, but he didn't seem old enough to be lecturing me like a grown-up. You're one of those delinquent types, aren't you? What makes you say that? Because you look like a thug. Gee, sorry. His appearance was nothing like the average person's. His hair and eyes were both pale in color. To be fair, he rocked the look, but out here in the countryside, he was bound to attract all kinds of attention.
Ryoshi, good job, you rocking that look.
This is my natural color, unfortunately. You don't like it? I was more interested in his irritated tone of voice. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Huh. Since he was dodging the question, I took that to mean he didn't enjoy the topic. Everyone always tells me to dye it black, so I tried it once and I looked like a damn freak. I tried to picture him with black hair. It wasn't pretty. Yeah, you're right. You wouldn't look good with black hair. The mental image was just too funny. Rude little twerp. You're the one who brought it up. Why was I laughing so hard? You wouldn't think it was that hilarious, yet for some reason it was. Hey, so... will you come back here again tomorrow night? I asked as I wiped the tears of laughter from my eyes. Excuse me? Why would I? Are you saying you're going to come back here alone again? Yeah, that's the plan. I smiled faintly. You can't be serious. The next night, sure enough, Ryoshi showed up at the lake. As soon as he saw me, he ran a hand through his ash-gray hair. I guess he thought I was joking about coming back. Silently, he sat down beside me. A few minutes passed in which neither of us said a word. It was a peaceful moment. The only sound was that of the waves. Just like always. Except this time, I wasn't alone. As I gazed out at the water, lost in thought, Ryoshi slowly began to speak. Is it fun? Just looking out at the empty lake? Not really. He took a small pack from his pants pocket and pulled out a thin white stick. What is that? A cigarette. What's a cigarette? I'd never heard this word before. What? You've never seen one before? What a strange kid. As he spoke, he set the cigarette between his lips. You eat it? No, you inhale the smoke. How is that any different? Good question. He reached into his pocket again. This time he produced a lighter. So you light it on fire? I guess that's one way to create smoke. Yep. I take it you know what a lighter is, then. He lit the cigarette with no trouble, as if he'd done it 100 times before. White smoke rose up into the air. The smell stung my nostrils, and as I inadvertently inhaled the smoke, my lungs reflexively coughed it back out. What a weird smell! I buried my nose in my elbow to protect it from the smoke. So does the smoke taste good or something? Not at all. It's nasty. Huh. So you don't like smoking, but you do it anyway? That's weird. Yeah, maybe so. He pulled the cigarette from his lips and exhaled a gust of white smoke. It stood out in sharp contrast against the dark night sky, almost like a ghost.
They say smoking poisons the body, but there are tons of people in the world who choose to do it anyway.
It's poison?
Yeah, it is. So don't try it at home, alright, kid?
He put the cigarette back between his lips, a stoic expression on his face. It was poison, yet he smoked it as if it was his duty.
Kids like you should stick to lollipops.
As he spoke, he produced a brightly wrapped candy from the pocket of his jacket and handed it to me.
Pass.
I threw it on the ground.
Hey!
He smacked me over the head.
Goddamn twerp. Didn't anybody teach you some manners?
I'm not a twerp. I scowled. I wasn't expecting a total stranger to hit me. Meanwhile, Ryoshi put out his cigarette, rose to his feet, and picked up the lollipop. Silently, I watched as he unwrapped it and put it in his mouth.
This tastes way better.
Isn't it dirty? I stared in disbelief.
What? No. It still had its wrapper on.
Huh. He rolled the lollipop around on his tongue. The more I watched him, the more it piqued my curiosity. On second thought, I think I want one.
Will you make up your mind?
As he spoke, he produced another lollipop from his pocket.
Here.
This time, I held it in my hand.
You're not gonna eat it.
No, that wasn't why I wanted one. I just wanted to copy him. Ah. I held the lollipop aloft. Inside the clear wrapper, the bright red candy sparkled in the moonlight. It almost looked like an apple.
Almost. Was it an apple-flavored lollipop or cherry?
From then on, Ryoshi continued to show up night after night. We talked about all kinds of stuff. He told me he moved out here all by himself to attend college. His parents were doctors, and they wanted him to study medicine too.
I'm not really fit to be a doctor. I'm not that smart, and I'm not that good with my hands.
And you don't like blood either.
Right you are.
He was uncomfortable with blood, yet he was trying to be a doctor anyway. So why don't you like blood exactly? He paused for a moment.
I hate the coppery smell. And I hate the color.
What, red?
It's just kind of gross, you know.
Huh. I pictured blood. Bright red blood. Yeah. Evidently, he and I had some things in common. Me too.
Huh?
I hate the color red too. Before I knew it, the word slipped out. This time, his voice carried a hint of amusement. Looking up, I realized he was actually smiling for a change. What are you smirking about? You're freaking me out.
I'm just not used to hearing you talk about yourself. Oh!
I decided to smack him, just in case. He was right. I never contributed to the conversation. I only ever listened. Until now, he never really commented on it. But it wasn't because he wasn't interested in me. If he wasn't interested, then he wouldn't bother coming here night after night. That said, he didn't pry or get involved more than absolutely necessary. His motives were a mystery, but still, he struck me as sincere. Just then, he plunged a hand into his pocket. Another cigarette?
How'd you know?
He deftly lit the cigarette like he'd done so many times before. White smoke rose into the air once more. Anyone could have guessed. I had spent the past few nights hanging out with him, and by this point, he was fairly predictable. Come to think of it, I'd adapted to the smell of the smoke, too. Meanwhile, he continued to smoke with an apathetic look on his face. He sat in silence, just staring out at the empty sky. This meant he was thinking about something. Yet another thing I'd learned about him in the short time we'd known each other.
So, how come you smoke if you know it's bad for you? Do you want to die?
No, I'm not trying to die. It's just...
Just what?
when I do it, I feel like I'm that much closer to my goal.
Huh.
I didn't press further. He had his own life, just like I had mine. If he wanted to tell me, he was free to do so, and if not, he could keep it to himself.
That reminds me. Ouch!
As he looked up suddenly, the cigarette fell from his lips and grazed his skin. What a klutz.
I brought a little gift for you tonight.
What is it?
Half expecting more candy, I looked at him curiously. Then he pulled a book from his briefcase.
Found this when I was cleaning my room. Want it?
In other words, he was trying to pawn off his trash.
You like books, don't you?
Slowly I nodded. I didn't just like books. I loved books.
Thank you.
The words came to me naturally as I accepted the book. He had given me other gifts in the past, but this was the first time I'd actually thanked him.
Be sure to read it when you get home.
He seemed pleased with my reaction because he ruffled my hair.
Yeah, I know.
His hand was warm, and I didn't mind the affection. In the end, I was so curious to read my new book that I went home early that night. I'm back. All the lights were off inside the house, and although it was winter, the heater was off and it was freezing inside. Careful not to trip over anything, I navigated my way to the living room, where I found my mother asleep.
You'll catch pneumonia, you know.
I couldn't let my beloved mother get sick, so I grabbed the blanket off the floor and put it back over her. On the table was an apple pie.
Thanks for the food, Mother.
Apple pies were my mother's specialty. She used to make them for me all the time, but she stopped having much free time after she started working outside the home. Once I finished my meal, I pulled on my red cloak and moved to the window.
Red cloak again, eh? Interesting.
We lived deep in the woods, but with a thick blanket of snow reflecting the moonlight, the nights weren't quite so dark. Then it was time to start my new book. If Mother knew I was doing this, would she be upset with me? Or would she be happy? Either way, she had no way of actually finding out since she was asleep. Unlike the fairy tales Mother would often read to me at bedtime, Ryoshi's book was full of intricate human relationships and plot twists.
I hear you about those plot twists, man.
The next day.
What?
Kid, you're practically skin and bones. Have you been eating at all?
Sure, I eat.
Here, eat this.
He thrust a plastic bag at me.
What's in there?
Inside I could see sandwiches, rice balls, and a variety of other snacks.
You're still a kid, so you need to eat more. Otherwise you won't grow big and strong. Relax. I didn't poison them or anything.
I sat there in silence for a moment. Then, as if to reassure me, he reached into the bag, grabbed a sandwich, unwrapped it, and took a bite.
Is it good?
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. If you want to find out for sure, then have one.
No thanks.
What, you're not hungry?
Nah. I was lying. Truth be told, I was starving. But I couldn't accept his charity, no matter what. Huntsman, do you ever cook for yourself?
Nope.
Do you have someone else who cooks for you?
No, I live on my own.
Huh.
What about you?
My mother always makes apple pies for me.
Apple pies, you say?
Uh-huh.
Makes a mental note of that.
Before we went home, Ryoshi forced me to take the bag of food. He refused to take no for an answer. And so I carried the whole bag home with me. I'm back. When I arrived at home, I called out into the darkness. Then I set my bag down on the kitchen table. It felt like Ryoshi was treating me like a stray cat. A wild animal, untamed by human hands. Part of me thought this was pretty rude, but at the same time, I knew he was just trying to be nice. And because of that, I was starting to think it might be okay to eat this food. I pulled a sandwich out of the bag and unwrapped it. It looked extremely appetizing. Then I opened my mouth wide and took a bite. But my body rejected it and I spat it out on the spot. I couldn't remember the last time I successfully ate something. For as long as I could remember, no matter how hungry I got, my stomach rejected all food. I wanted to eat so badly, but I couldn't eat unless my stomach let me. This is why I tried to turn him down. In the mirror, I could see a bony boy staring back at me.
Good down, never gonna go, here is a kiss with